Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do a book review of Thud, written by Terry Pratchett. This is a fantasy novel first published in 2005. It is the 34th Discworld novel of 41 in total, and it is the 7th novel set around the City Watch character subseries. So, first of all, what is the Discworld itself? It is, as the name might suggest, a flat disc-shaped world which rests on the back of 4 very large elephants. Sounds strange, gets stranger, because those 4 elephants stand on the back of a very large world turtle called Great Chewin, which swims through space as though it was water. Sounds strange, and it is, but also works extremely well, and the strangeness lends itself brilliantly well to many of the ideas that Pratchett talks about. So, this novel starts off set in the city of Ankh-Morpork, which is essentially Pratchett having fun with London, England. All the stereotypes of London are amplified and taken to extreme levels, and you can tell that he's really enjoying himself writing about the city. In Ankh-Morpork there is essentially the police force which is called the City Watch, and the City Watch is run by Samuel Vimes, who is a very important character and one of the older characters at this point in the overall Discworld novels. So the book starts off with actually as such a bit of a history and a bit of a reference to something that's happened in and been mentioned in other books before, and that is the Battle of Kumar Valley. This is an event that characters have referenced in other books, where basically it's a battle between dwarfs and trolls who instinctively don't trust each other, and they tend to get quite combative near each other often. They can control themselves, but it's hard to. Kumar Valley is considered one that is a bit unusual because both sides consider the other to be cowardly, because as far as the dwarfs are concerned, the trolls ambushed them cowardly, and as far as the trolls are concerned, the dwarfs ambushed the trolls cowardly at Kumar Valley. Obviously both sides can't be wrong, or can they? Nobody knows. It was a long time ago, far away, so nobody's really sure what Kumar Valley is anymore, other than basically it's a catalyst and an excuse basically for people, trolls and dwarfs in particular, to be basically intolerant towards one another and to be aggressive. And that's the situation of the city. Something is happening in the city. There's a undercurrent that is starting to cause trouble, and there's another major problem in that a dwarf is murdered. This is a problem because there is a celebration every year to commemorate Kumar Valley that both the dwarfs and the trolls do celebrate. Being a murder around the same time is also a massive problem, and basically this means the whole of Ankh-Morpork is essentially a powder keg. Everybody's on edge because they know that if something doesn't happen, that the dwarfs and the trolls are going to have a massive issue, and nobody wants basically a war between them in the middle of a city. Because at this point in the Discworld books, a lot of dwarfs and a lot of trolls have moved into Ankh-Morpork over time. The world's more advanced now and more civilised, or at least it's meant to be, and there's a lot of dwarfs and a lot of trolls. So if there's a issue between the two, then Ankh-Morpork is not going to do well at all. I mean, it will basically wreck the city completely. So everybody's on edge, and essentially Samuel Vimes and the rest of the Watch needs to find out the reason for this dwarf getting murdered, and to basically try and stop some kind of civil war happening in his city, because he quite likes the city as it is. He doesn't want trolls and dwarfs fighting literally outside his office, which would involve his own officers, because a lot of the City Watch officers are indeed trolls and dwarfs. So this would directly affect them themselves, and it's just bad news for everybody. So it's a very volatile situation. It's got interesting new characters, and indeed that's what I'm going to talk about now, because you've got the old familiar characters like Samuel Vimes back, and he plays obviously the main role in the novel. You have Captain Kara Ironfounderson, who is a 6.5-foot dwarf by adoption, who is always a interesting and fun character. Plays a slightly lesser role in some regard in this novel than previous ones, but it's still a major role. There's Sergeant Angra, who is a werewolf, and she's a very interesting character as well, and she plays a fairly important role, as she always does in this novel. There is Detrius the Troll. In this, he plays a very interesting role because of obviously him just being what he is, a troll, during a time where dwarves and trolls are tensions are rising. So he's playing an almost political role in this. You know, he's kind of like thought of as one of the major trial officers. So Detrius actually has got a very curious role indeed, and you see sides to him that frankly you don't see normally, and I really do appreciate that. Oh, and then you have obviously Vimes' family, Sybil Rampkin, and his new son. And this presents a bit of a problem as well for Vimes, because every day at 6 PM he has to go home and read a story to his small baby son, who's about 1 year old at this point. And this must be done because it's just one of the things, sometimes you have to do things. The book he has to read is called Where's My Cow?, which is a picture book. Obviously I have the actual real version that they made of it. And this desire of Vimes to have his home life and still be the commander of the watch, which is an incredibly important role, and it's also incredibly time consuming. It consumes more of his life than he would like it to be, or at least than his wife would like it to be. He loves the role, he loves being this commander, but he's aware it's a difficult role. You know, he wants to try and get the balance right. You know, it's dealing with issues there. And there is also some interesting new characters. One of them being Sally, who is a vampire, and the newest member of the City Watch. Vimes does not like vampires. He's always been against one of them joining the Watch. In this book, obviously a vampire joins the Watch finally. So yeah, it's interesting there, and a little bit problematic for Vimes because, you know, he doesn't have anything directly against vampires on a personal level. He just thinks vampires can't be trusted, so he's got a prejudice there which he's trying to get over, and well, he's trying to compensate for. And this creates interesting character dynamics for pretty much every character, like interesting relationships with all the others. And frankly, the characters, as always, have got true personality, humour in them, and real sense of place within the world. You know, none of the characters are there just because they can be. Pratchett doesn't add characters just because, oh yeah, you know, you need a few background characters. I mean, there always are background characters, but not significant ones in that regard. All the major characters are there because they need to be there. It's critical to the plot, and indeed they all work within the world. They all work together and they work separately and create something basically greater than some of their parts. And one of some of their parts is the environment, which is Ankh-Morpork. As I said, it is based on London, England. It's also got blatant references to other major western cities. I mean, there's a little bit of New York elements in Ankh-Morpork as well as a few of elements. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a few elements of Paris in France. In Ankh-Morpork, it's mostly London really, but there's certainly elements of a few of the major capitals there. And the living city, which is what it is, because you get all the people just wandering by. Vimes and the Watch and all the other characters they do interact with normal people all the time, do have conversations with them, which as a reader you witness, and it's just, you get a sense of the city being alive and being but it's pretty much a character in itself. It always has been at Mortal, but especially by this point, Pratchett has developed a city that feels alive and feels like you know the city, you know the place, and you know why people are there. They're not just living there because they can. They're living there because the desire to live in this environment, to live in a city that's got drive, ambition, and potentially, you know, money to be made, and therefore a better life to be had, is like real major capitalism. Indeed, most major cities, people want to live there because they want more than they have, and they think that the big cities will have the answers. Whether they do or not is another question. Indeed, one that Tip actually does talk about. And indeed, the themes and the ideas in this book are around those kind of ideas. One of them is, of course, around the idea of society and what makes society. I mean, the City Watch books always focus on that. But one of the major things that he talks about, though, is essentially extremist views and sort of very fundamentalist views, and about how being intolerant towards others, all it leads to is more intolerance, because this is an age-old sort of issue between trolls and dwarfs, and obviously is an allegory for racial tensions in our own world, black and white, or any other, frankly, national issues between different countries. Where two countries are fighting, and they're only fighting because the both countries saying, well, you did this stuff many years ago, and the other country can say, well, yes, but you did this other thing slightly older ago, and then the other country can say, yes, but then you did yet another thing before that. Both countries have got this series of, frankly, horrible atrocities and awful things they've done to one another, and people are actually trying to say that you can't just keep holding on to the past. View the past, and you can look at the past and learn from the past, but don't use it to keep bringing new intolerances forward. You've got to learn from it, not just think, oh well, these are the nasty things that happened in the past. I'm going to hold you responsible for things that you can't be responsible for, and keep this cycle of hatred, pain, anger, and intolerance going. He's trying to say you need to be better than that, better than the people that have gone by, better than your ancestors. You've got to grow, learn, and become much more. And frankly, that applies obviously, especially with what's going on in the world sadly at the moment, so badly at the moment, and it's quite significant. I mean, I'm very glad that I read this, and I think this book might be a timely read at the moment, because it's talking about issues that are relevant now, and frankly they have been relevant for many years now. Hopefully in the future we can get to a point where all of this is no longer an issue, obviously where we learn from our past instead of just dwelling on it, and actually learn to maybe not just blame each other for things that you can't blame each other for because it's pointless, and try to learn and actually become, maybe use our brains, which humanity is defined by our brains and their intelligence, meant to be, and yet we don't use our intelligence most of the time. We just act on basic emotions often, especially, unfortunately, certain people in charge over the years, and indeed at the moment, people are basing their actions and decisions on really simplistic and stupid things, and not thinking what could actually benefit them and the countries they are supposedly meant to be the government of. And this discusses government and how government is more than just the ones in charge. They have a responsibility, they have a duty to, or at least they're meant to, of being the voice of the people and understanding the people, and trying to actually improving the lives of the general population. I mean, it's sad that, for instance, I'm English, our government's not doing that at the moment, as far as I can tell. Many other countries, and we can say that about their own governments as well, at this moment in time in the world. And this book is very timely and relevant at the moment, and the messages that Tip talks about, there are many others as well, are frankly really deep and meaningful. Some of them don't always hit the mark, but the major ones still do. And overall, I would say that this is a really well written book with a great plot, great characters, a great world building book, and obviously the ideas and this general things that Tip is trying to bring to the fore and discuss and make you seriously think about are frankly phenomenal. And I would recommend this book, not necessarily the first Tip though, because it's been quite far into the series, but You can certainly read this relatively early on than some maybe. And it's a very worthwhile book if obviously you're a Pratchett fan, then you know it's going to be given that you'll read it eventually. And with that said, that is it for this review. So if you've read this or you'd like to, and you'd like to know more information in whatever way, then please leave a comment and I'll try to help in whatever way I can. The link to this book on Goodreads, along with all of my social media links, can be found in the description box below. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.